Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Matt here at the range today, testing out a few things as well as just practicing with the new camera setup that I recently got. Hopefully you've noticed a little bit of an improvement in video quality on the channel. But I'm here mainly to kind of test out the Tactacam today, which is a really neat system. This is kind of the system I've been using to film through my scope, which I think adds a lot of value for certain videos. You can see more or less what I'm doing with my reticle for wind holds and elevation holds and whatnot. So I really like the idea of being able to film through my scope while using it and then overlay that footage onto the videos. And I've had a lot of good feedback on it as well. And essentially this is two parts. You have the camera itself here, as well as this little device that is a series of mirrors or prisms. I'm not sure exactly what's inside here, but it allows you to mount the camera onto your scope so that you can still use your scope and look through it while it's recording what you're seeing. And you know, that's a really cool idea. But unfortunately, I really wasn't too happy with the actual video quality coming out of the previous Tactacam that I had, which was the cheapest model. It was the Tactacam Solo camera, and the reason why I went with that is because I just wanted to have a more economical option, and I really wasn't happy with the video quality. It was really washed out. It was like overexposed, and the middle had a really bright spot that, especially in the snow, made it really difficult to see what was going on. The reticle wasn't clear, and I couldn't even use some of the footage from that Tactacam camera. So I contacted Tactacam and asked them if that was normal. And they said, yeah, even though the Solo is compatible with this FTS system, which is the film through scope system, it's really not the best for video quality. So they recommended that I try their higher end model, which is the 5.0. So that's what I have here now today. And I want to see how much better it is. I don't have my hopes too high because I think these cameras are generally made for hunting. So, you know, you just have to see a deer go down and not really the fine details of what I'm trying to get out of the video of precision rifle shooting. However, I didn't really want to pay, I think it's like 900 Canadian for the trigger cam, which is generally the best one you can buy on the market. So I'm going to see if this is going to work well for me today. I remember, especially when my targets were on a white background at 50 yards, they were really hard to see with the Tactacam Solo camera. So I have my targets again on a white piece of paper today. I'm going to put it at 50 yards and use the 5.0 in the setup to see if it's any better. And then I'll also put some sort of targets and stuff at 218 yards approximately to see if I can even see any sort of detail, and we'll just go from there. All right, so this is what we're dealing with. We got the camera mounted into the FTS mount. You can see it adds a lot of material behind your scope. So if you have a really high recoiling rifle with a short eye relief, this probably wouldn't work. On a rimfire, this is totally fine, obviously. And it just allows you to film through the scope while you're still using it from behind. I'm gonna go ahead and check the framing of the video via the Wi-Fi app. And so we can see that the video is more or less straight and centered. All right, I have the Tactacam mounted up onto the rifle, so I'm just gonna put my 50-yard target up. Again, not really shooting groups today because it is quite windy. I just more or less want to see if the camera is going to be working better. I also have a splatter target here. I plan to put past 200 yards to see if we can even see hits on the camera on the splatter target, which I'm not too hopeful that that's possible. But more or less, I just want to be able to show what I'm holding for wind and whatnot during matches. So this is just more for interest's sake. All right, I'm finally set up. I have a target board at 50 yards, and I put a big splatter target at approximately 220 yards, along with some clay. Sorry, it's windy, so I'm just looking at something blowing across the range. So at 220 yards, I have a big splatter target, as well as some clays. If it sounds like I'm out of breath, it's because I ran back and forth at 200 yards a couple times while setting up targets just to keep warm in the cold. So I'm a bit out of breath here. There are some features I really like about the Tactacam setup. First off, you can kind of mount it in any sort of angle you want, which is really neat. The trigger cam I guess you can do the same thing, but generally speaking, the bulk of it is on the 12 o'clock position, which would maybe get in your way for looking at your turret. I like how I've mounted the Tactacam here off to the side because it gives me plenty of clearance for the bolt knob, but it gives me a nice clean line of sight to my turret still. So when I'm making my turret adjustments, I don't have to come off the rifle. I also really like the camera itself in terms of the features. I like how it vibrates to tell you what mode it's in, because obviously it's a hunting camera, so you don't want it to make a bunch of beeps and bops and whatnot. And the UI, the user interface, is pretty intuitive as well. The 5.0 here is a pretty good upgrade from the Solo in terms of the user interface, because you have 2 buttons as opposed to 1. And it can also film in 4K, which I am not using. I generally film everything in 1080p, so that's what I'm using for this camera as well. I'm filming in 1080p, 30 frames per second, although it can do 60 frames per second, and I believe 120 frames per second in 720, but generally speaking, I'm just always going to use this in 1080, 30 frames per second. It is recording right now, so I can show you my targets. And first thing, you can see how close I need to get to this FTS mount. This is my proper eye relief right here, and I can't really estimate too well, but there's less than an inch away from the back of this FTS mount to my glasses. So that's something to definitely keep in mind if you're using this on a high recoiling rig. You want a scope that has a lot of eye relief. The Minox LR here does have a decent eye relief, and I'm still really close to the FTS mount, which obviously is not ideal, but it works fine on a rimfire setup. And obviously a hat with a brim like this can get in the way when you got to get so close to the eyepiece here. So I'm going to just kind of tilt my hat backwards so it's not hitting it. And it is recording. So you can see this is the set of targets I have at 50. I have 4 black dots at the top and 8 orange dots at the bottom. And my scope is zoomed all the way in to 25 times power at the moment. And I'll shoot some groups on that paper afterwards and see how clear the video footage is. And then if I go out to 220 yards and focus in my scope parallax, you can see the splatter target right there in the middle, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 clay pigeons on the side there that I will also try and hit. But it is pretty windy today, gusty, so we'll see if we can make contact with that. Another thing I don't like about the FTS system is that you actually have to use your scope's diopter adjustment in order to properly focus the reticle and image, which obviously might not be the same setting as what's proper for your eye. So just using this system before, I know I have to back out my diopter approximately a quarter turn for it to be as clear as possible using this camera system. And it actually makes my reticle a little bit blurry to my eye, which is obviously not what you want. What's really cool about like the Tactacam camera system is it has its own focus wheel, but the Tactacam system does not. If I really cared about utmost performance at matches, and I was really trying to always get as best of a placement as possible, I honestly would not use the Tactacam system, because it also does not only that, which is a big factor, making your reticle blurry potentially, because you have to use the diopter adjustment to tune the image, but it also does degrade the image through your scope a little bit, because you have a series of mirrors and prisms or whatnot in the FTS mount. The actual image quality that you see through your scope with this mount on is degraded, so it's a little bit darker and it's not quite as sharp. So obviously, you know, you're paying for such nice glass and then you're putting something on it that degrades the image quality. It's not great. It also does add a lot of material around what your sight picture, so it just kind of puts you in kind of like a tunnel vision a little bit more, which is not great for competition style shooting. However, since it does add so much value to the videos, in my personal opinion, I probably will run this for the majority of my matches this year, because again, I really like providing cool video content, and I think it's worth it for the video, even though it's not the best for my own performance at these matches. But again, it's a small thing, but if you want the utmost performance out of your rifle, I would probably save this for practice and not run it at the matches. But let's go ahead here and load up some ammo and shoot some groups at 50. Today I'll be using long range match SK. I don't have my chronograph out with me today just because I had so many other things to think about. I didn't want to bring it out. And I actually came to the range quite late today. They're closing in less than 2 hours, so I gotta make sure I don't dilly-dally too much. Unfortunately, I cleaned out my hard drives, so I don't think I have the raw video files from the solo camera anymore, but I'll go back to some of my YouTube videos and pull some of the footage from there to put side by side with this 5.0 camera to show you guys the difference. I was really not happy with some of the video footage from the Tactacam Solo. All right, let's make sure this thing's recording. Gives me a little vibration, which is pretty cool. All right, I'll start on the black dots up top. My first shot was high above the target at about the 1 o'clock position. So my 4 other shots were all on the target, on the 1-inch sticker. My bolt feels really dry. I did clean it and I can't remember if I re-lubed it, which I don't think I did. So my bolt is not cycling very smooth at the moment. So those 3 shots are stacked on top of each other, favoring right slightly, which makes sense because we do have a gusting left to right wind. So I'll leave those 3 alone because it's a nice group. And you can see the wind gusts we're dealing with today. Or at least hopefully you can hear that. Next group here. Right and low. Same spot. I wonder if that's the wind. I'm going to go to the orange dot here now. So not the greatest groups, but let's do one more. So that was a decent group. And you can see I'm holding left for wind. Let's go to 220. I'm just gonna grab my dope. It is a bit colder today, and I do see some of my shots at 50 were favoring low slightly, which would make sense. It's about -7, and with the wind chill, I'm sure it's colder than that. So it looks like I have to hold 8.9, or I should say dial 8.9 for my 220-yard targets. So that's 8.9 there, and we will reload the magazines. Now hopefully you guys have maybe noticed the better video quality from the new camera. My old video camera setup was literally just a point and shoot camcorder, which I was pretty happy with to begin. You know, it worked well and it served me very well, but it was definitely a bit grainy, the video footage, and it could have been better. So I decided to upgrade the camera this year, and maybe I'll show the camera setup in a second. So for those of you who are interested, this is the new camera setup that I kind of got going for the YouTube channel. The body is a Sony a6600 or Alpha 6600, and I'm using just the standard kit lens at the moment. I got a small rig cage to mount on the body, so it can give me places for accessories like the side handle here, which is really nice because you can use your left hand and your right hand to kind of stabilize the entire thing really comfortably. And I also have this kind of top handle here, which is great for getting low shots without actually having to crouch down low. And the mic is a Video Micro Go, I believe it's called, from Rode. And I decided to get this because the old mic I was using was a lot larger, and it had an on-off switch because it was powered with a AA battery, which was a slight issue because sometimes either Dory, my wife, or myself would forget to turn on the mic, and when it's plugged into the camera, you don't have audio. So a lot of the video footage we forgot to get audio for is unusable. So this one is just plug and go. As long as it's plugged into the camera here, it's recording as soon as you start recording with the camera. So I decided to get that. And again, it's a little bit smaller, keeps things more compact. And I have a little mount here for a battery pack. So if my battery in the camera starts dying, I can just hook up the battery pack quickly and start trickle charging it, which is a really neat idea, so I don't have to constantly swap out batteries. So I'm still trying to get used to it in terms of choosing the right settings, because everything is manual on this thing, right? It's not just a point and shoot, so I have to make sure all the settings are proper to get good video footage, which I'm still learning to do. Again, it can film in 4K, but I'm shooting in 1080 just because I don't think my videos warrant 4K. But it can do it if it really becomes, you know, necessary in the future. But the 1080 of this camera is already way better than the 1080 of the previous camera. So let's go out to 220 yards here. Focus my parallax. So this is really clear to my eye. It'll be interesting to see how clear it is in the camera. And perhaps I have to readjust that diopter setting for this camera. But you can see this piece of paper here on this target board, how it's blowing. Right now the wind is lower, but you can still see the papers moving. So we do have to deal with some wind out here today. And I'm interested to see if I'll be able to see hits on that splatter target with the new Tactacam 5.0 camera, which again, I don't have my hopes too high for this. With the solo camera, I know there's no way you would ever see hits on a splatter target past 50 or 100 yards or something. So it'll be interesting to see if I can see anything on this at 218 yards. You can see now the piece of paper is calm, which means it's probably a good time to take a few shots. So I'm gonna hold 0.5 mil for wind still, because I can see the snow blowing left to right, and the wind's picking up actually, so. Okay, so that shot is just touching the bullseye. Elevation is almost perfect at the 3 o'clock position, but I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick it up. So that was a good wind call. Slightly more wind than 0.5 mil at 218 yards. Elevation was still good. Wind picked up, pushed me about maybe a 1/4 mil more to the right. Same spot, just slightly low. About 1 inch low of the bullseye at the 6 o'clock position. And that was way off to the right of the target. So pointing with my reticle here, this was shot number 1. Shot number 2 and 3 was generally in the same spot here. shot number 4, and then shot number 5. So that's probably about a 5-inch group. And again, I'm just interested to see if I can even pick up those hits on the camera, which is recording, thank goodness. Sometimes I forget to hit that record button. So let's go ahead to the clays and see if we can hit one of these. I'm gonna hold about 7/10 for wind. Oh, the wind call is perfect. It's just slightly low. Same hole. All right, so that took me like 8 shots to hit, but I finally did it with a 1 mil hold. So a full mil of hold at 220 yards. But that for sure you can see on the camera. And you know, with my matches, all I'm really trying to show you is what I'm holding for wind. So the really fine details I'm not too worried about. Again, I just want to see how much better this camera is than the Solo that I was previously using. Another test I wanted to do was on steel targets, because I remember at an ORPS match here, some of the footage was really bad when it was white background again in the snow. And the target was probably at around 100 yards. It was really hard to make out in the video. So I'm going to put a steel target at 100 yards and just do a little bit of practice, see how the video footage comes out on the Tactacam 5.0. But first off the bench, I just want to confirm my drop, which I believe is just going to be 2 mils, or maybe 2.1 in this weather. So I'll dial 2.1 because I was slightly low at 50. And we'll just engage it a couple times here off the bench. Camera is recording. And I'll go for the small one first. I'll hold about 3/10 for wind. All right, so those hits were slightly high, favoring the top half, but that's pretty good. So we'll go to the barricade now and do some barricade work. As you can see, I only brought out one target stand, so I have 2 targets on it, a 4-inch and a 3-inch. Those are the only ones in my bag, and we'll just run some practice stages. One miss. So I just stepped to the side range here because somebody was shooting center fire beside me, but obviously I haven't looked at the video footage of the new Tactacam 5.0 camera, but I'll probably put some annotations of my thoughts throughout the video footage to see if it's an improvement or not. But you saw just now I ran through 4 or 5 practice stages at a target at 100 yards in the snow with all the white background, which was giving me a lot of issues before with the Tactacam Solo. So again, I'm really interested to see if the 5.0 is any better. Hopefully it is, because this is going to be what I use to kind of overlay my scope, what I see through the scope onto stages as I shoot them in matches and whatnot. So I think it adds a lot to the videos. I really like it. Again, the Chur cam is a better option if you're willing to pay, but I was looking for something a little more economical, and I'm not looking for the super good, you know, 4K HD video footage. I'm just looking for something that can give my viewers a sense of what I'm trying to do with my scope and my rifle during the stages. And I think the Tactacam can do that. I mean, the Solo was giving me some decent footage here and there, but it really got a lot worse with the snow in the background, and the overexposure was just something that was really hard to deal with, because once your video footage is overexposed, all the detail is lost. So even in post-production, you can't really bring back the details you want in the video file. But that's basically it for this little range trip. Again, it was more or less to test the new Tactacam camera, and you guys can let me know what you think. Obviously, I also wanted to practice using my new camera a little bit more, which I showed you guys as well. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Cheers.